Welcome to the January 21st, 2021 Governance Workshop of the Pleasanton Unified School District. Want to welcome everyone here and just remind folks that because of the governor's executive order, we are continuing to do our meetings via teleconference. This one is a little bit different even yet because this is a governance workshop where the board will talk about our norms and our protocols and how we want to work together as a team. So with that, I just want to mention that it is a special board meeting, so there is no blue card for comments not on our agenda tonight. If you're attending and you'd like to make a comment about our agenda item, you would still use the yellow card on the form, and your procedures are as normal. You'll be in the waiting room, and when it's time to speak, you'll be called in and you'll have 2 minutes to speak. And there's no video at this time. There'll just be a public comment thing displayed. I believe we are being recorded and live streamed tonight, but are we being televised as well? Yes, okay, and we're being televised. So if you want to watch on a different way, you can go streaming from TV 28 on tv30.org. We would like to go ahead and call the meeting to order and say the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you would join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And as has been my want for the last couple of weeks, I have a little tiny bit of a comment to make just on the state of where we are. This week, yesterday was the inauguration and the peaceful transfer of power in our country, which was a welcome sight. And we, as our transfer of power here in Pleasanton, we have successfully transitioned. We had our organization meeting in December, and we've begun the work together as a new board. And again, one of the first things that we're doing this new year is establishing those norms of how we best can work together and the expectations that we have of each other. We're going to review our governance handbook. We're also going to take a look at the organization work plan that Dr. Hagelin has put together for us. It's very comprehensive and awesome. So with that, Dr. Hagelin, well, I guess we have to approve the agenda. Is there anything anyone would like to change on the agenda tonight? With seeing nothing, I'll seek a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda, and Kelly will second it. Any discussion? Trustee Miller?
Aye.
Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Trustee McCashy?
Aye.
Trustee Maher?
Aye.
And Trustee Larson, aye. Thank you very much. I'm going to let Dr. Hagelin lead us off a little bit on this conversation.
Well, welcome everybody. This is our annual board governance workshop. It's an opportunity for us to talk a little bit about how we intend to work with one another. And I think it's particularly important this year in that we have 2 new board members. And so a norming session where we can kind of revisit our expectations of the governance team is really important. But I think one of the most important things that we can do, not just in this meeting, but in general, is to really learn more about each other and find ways to connect with each other. So I wanted to start off with a little bit of an activity. And so I'm going to ask y'all a question, and this includes our cabinet members. So you guys can't just smile and look pretty. You have to participate. So the question is, and Lanita, that means you too. So just be prepared. So to come off of mute when it's your turn. So we really want to try to make the best use of our time. So when I say 60 seconds or less in your response, let's try to keep to 60 seconds. I don't want to buzz anybody off, but I will if I have to. So here's the question. In 60 seconds or less, describe the characteristics of your favorite teacher and how they helped shape you as an adult. And I will go first, which will give you a little bit more think time, right? So my very favorite teacher was Mrs. Chun. She was my second grade teacher. She was the teacher who realized that I might not think the way other people think. And that my challenging behavior and questions was more curiosity than it was just being obstinate. And she was a defender of mine through my fourth year of elementary school when we moved out of that school. For the life of me, I have tried to find her. One of my other second grade classmates, he and I have been trained as a judge in Oklahoma. And we have tried every route we know how to try to find Mrs. Chun because she would be shocked where we ended up in our lives and how much of it was because she believed, she saw something in us that others didn't, and she helped us believe in it too.
I'll go next, David, if that's okay.
Sure.
So my teacher would be Miss Gaines. I had a second grade teacher whose name I won't mention, but she had a real difficult time pronouncing the word Julio. And as she was reading the rosters of the students' names, she got to my name and she just couldn't pronounce Julio. But my middle name's Alfredo. So she said, oh, Alfredo, like Alfredo sauce. And I was Alfredo sauce from second grade to third grade until I got to Miss Gaines. And Miss Gaines found a way to find peace with that and taught the whole class how to pronounce Julio and went into this whole focus on the name and focus on the culture. She was an African-American teacher that taught me the sitar and just went beyond what was expected. So anyhow, still is my hero.
I'll go next, I guess. I don't have one, I have two. And unlike those of you who were mentioning folks from pretty early on, both of my teachers that really touched me were high school teachers. One was Mrs. Jean Heron, whose husband also was our chemistry teacher. She was an English teacher, and she just took my writing and my creative writing just to new levels and gave me the confidence to step out and take risks, and just really gave me a shot in the arm with kind of coming out of I wasn't really in a shell, but just to shine that light on that. And the other teacher was my high school physics teacher, Mr. Benzinger, who, by the way, attended my husband at my wedding because we went to high school together. And so Mr. Benzinger, as a physics teacher, was just this crazy, wild-eyed, fun teacher who got us really interested in science and engaged our curiosity and just made, it wasn't even so much fun. It was just like you really wanted to know how everything worked and how to get from here to there. And he just was a really great guy. And like I said, 4 years later, he was invited to our wedding. So that was kind of special for both of us.
I'll go ahead next. I also have two. First one is my fifth grade teacher, Mrs. Logan. And the best way I can describe her is just really building that classroom community. And I just remember her reading aloud to us, story time, and there were some books that she was reading. And we begged at fifth grade every Friday to hear those stories. And it was really traumatic for us because she had to leave us mid-year because she was expecting a baby. And so we had to adjust. And so we had very high expectations for the substitute teacher that had to replace her. And we missed and grieved for her when she departed, but she profoundly made a huge impression on me. The second teacher I really would like to highlight, because he was an English teacher by academics, but he was most well known for being the drama director. And he really brought out the creativity for students, a channel for us to become leaders through the thespian troupe. And just 3 years ago, I had the opportunity to go back to see his one of his last performances before he retired. And I cannot say enough about how it was really magical going back into time, about how he could bring the talent of youth in drama, whether it be, everyone was a star. It didn't matter if they were in the backstage, stage manager, doing props, or on stage. It was with that team collaborative effort that everyone in those productions made a difference. And so he is someone I have high expectations to meet his standards, and really made a huge difference. Mr. Unteat, amazing. Salute. I wish I may have to send him this recording and share it with him. Thank you.
I can go next. So my teacher is also a high school teacher, and her name is Frau Erbel. She was obviously my German teacher, and I had her for 4 years. There were many things about her that made her special. Obviously, her personality, very bubbly, very engaging, and that type of thing. But she really brought to life for us, more things than just the language, right? So we certainly always, I still sing the Christmas songs that she taught us. And, she would show slides and stuff from Germany and everything and do that. But then what really kind of set her apart is we actually spent every lunchtime with her. She just hosted us in her class, and me and my best friends, we just hung out there and we talked about anything and everything, not even in German. And so, it's sort of that inspiration of wanting to learn more about the language and where it came from, but also the camaraderie. And she just was a genuinely nice person, easy to get to know.
Maybe I'll go next. I actually have two. One is Mrs. Smith, my second grade teacher, and she was my teacher when my mother passed away, and she took me kind of under her wing and got me through a very difficult time of my life, even to the fact that she caught me sneaking onto the bus and pulled me off the bus by my ear, and so I still remember both of those. And then the second teacher is Mr. McGrath, who was my English and counselor in high school. And he took a special interest in me and helped guide me through high school. And then when he left to become Dean of Santa Clara, I went on to college. And he then asked if I'd be godfather for his child, which I did. And so I saw him 3 or 4 times a year. And he always guided me through college, kept me going, guided me through the military, and then even got to see me before he passed away when I became a principal. So he was very special, as I would not be where I am today if it was not for his guidance. As much as I love my father, Jerry McGrath was my inspiration and guidance and my guardrails.
I can go next, David. So I have 2 as well, but the characteristics are pretty much the same. My first grade teacher, Mrs. Ayers, from Lincoln Elementary School in Oakland. I was a second language learner, learning English, immigrated here when I was 5 years old from the Philippines. And all through kindergarten, I literally didn't speak in school. I just didn't know the language. I was uncomfortable. It didn't help that I was also fluent in 3 other languages, Tagalog being one, and then also my parents each had their own dialects. So talk about a confused time in my life, learning, all these different languages. But the characteristics, so the other one is in 11th grade, my 11th grade English teacher, Miss Nancy Jacobs. And so they were just both very caring people. And I think even as a young person, and definitely later on in life, I realized that caring of Mrs. Ayers, just calling on me in class, challenging me in class, but not embarrassing me, really helped me to learn the language and to find my voice. And later on in life, in 11th grade, right, whole other side of the spectrum in education, Mrs. Jacobs did the same thing for me. And she guided me in terms of giving me strategies of how to be a better writer, how to really master English, some strategies of, how to comprehend text, even as an 11th grader. It was still pretty tough for me. So I really appreciated her. And she opened up her classroom too during lunchtime and would invite me in there with other kids and go over my papers and review them before a test. So I really appreciated that about her. And what I liked the most about Mrs. Jacobs is she guided me towards applying for college. And so I really appreciated that, or else I would not have applied. I really would not have. I just didn't have that guidance, or even the drive at the time. I didn't know any better. I was going to join the military. Not that would have been a bad idea, but she taught me how to apply for college. And so I went to college a year later, and here I am today. So I really appreciated both of them, Mrs. Ayers and Mrs. Jacobs.
So I can go next. I have my kindergarten teacher and my third grade teacher was the same teacher. So I was doubly impacted by this lady. Her name was Miss Callis. And in kindergarten, she played the piano. And so she used to play every day throughout the day to calm the class. She would play the piano through instruction. And it just really, really at an early age gave me a love of music and the impact of sound and music. So music is always playing in the background in our home. And then in third grade, I had her again. And as probably not a shocker to anyone, but I was a strong-willed little bossy child. And Ms. Callis would give me opportunities to lead in the class and taught me a lot about leading through kindness and being compassionate to other kids. And she was just the first person who really allowed me to have a voice in the classroom, but also be very mindful of the importance of leading with those things of compassion and being respectful and caring. And so that was she kind of took my strong-willed and kind of focused it in a positive direction.
I guess I'll go next. You all have really good memories and can remember names. I can remember faces, but two of my teachers in Los Gatos High really, left a really strong impression. I had a AP US history teacher that I remember really engaged us in critical thinking. It was during the Ronald Reagan years and Bush, and so interesting to have kind of that horizon opened up and really critically think and bring class really into connecting it with what was going on at the time and days, because I think sometimes everything is very theoretical and making it practical was really helpful. And on the other spectrum, I had a chemistry teacher, Mrs. McDonald, and both her husband and her taught, and I didn't get a chance to have her husband who taught biology because, I didn't get into that class, but I did have her for chemistry, and that scientific approach, the analytical approach was one thing that she left in me that I use to today. And it's just really good to have such strong teachers in our background.
I'll follow that. I have two teachers that come to mind. The first one is Mrs. Still from high school. She inspired me to pursue public speaking and to engage in competitions, which helped me to reach some milestones and some goals that I had set forth for myself during my high school year. And that helped to pave my major and some of the extracurricular activities that I did in college. Once in college, I was fearful of the stats class statistics that I had to take. And I had one professor, and that did not go so well. And so me and probably 75% of that class went to had the opportunity to re-engage with the same subject matter a second time. And this time we had a professor who connected to us, with us, explained things, and I got an excellent grade in that class. Now, I worked tirelessly, but I thought it was fun. And that was a night and day change in my thinking, not only about math, but about my ability to learn math and to learn it well. And I also understood the term grit because it took a lot of persistency on my part, but I was able to master those concepts. So those are the two teachers that come to my mind. I'm thankful for them both.
Yeah, I think I'm the last one. I went to a Catholic school, so I had Sister Alice, and she was very kind and caring and listened, but she'd also come to our house for dinner, which made her like a real person. And seeing a nun have a glass of wine was really changed my way of thinking, but she was just great.
Right, very good.
We haven't heard from Patrick, though.
There's Patrick. Come on, come off of camera, Patrick.
So I was very heavily influenced in high school by my my journalism teacher, Mrs. Tucker. I struggled to find my place, I guess, and I found that in writing, and I was kind of a pain in the butt as a student, but they gave. So I really found my love for writing, which led me to pursue a communications degree in college, and I had the chair of the communications department, and Dr. Dong was with my undergraduate degree, and he had an advisor for my master's thesis, and he's just somebody that never gave up on me. There were a couple things that happened during my college experience that set me back, and it's those teachers that inspired me and brought me back to education as a profession. And the teachers here brought me to Pleasanton. So those are my two picks.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And again, I think it just humanizes us a little bit. So as we think about how we engage with each other, it might be helpful to know some of those unique qualities that those teachers gave to us and the things that we value in other people. So we may have more of those. You just never know. So hopefully you have the handbook with you. I'm hoping that you have it there so that I don't have to put it up on the screen, because I'd rather look at your faces as we talk.
Me too.
So our goal tonight is to go through the handbook, the governance handbook, and we'll look through different aspects of that handbook, some of which have already been modified. Again, our goal tonight is not necessarily to do large modifications to the handbook. It really is to review it and to understand what is meant by the norms, as an example. And if we need to make changes, we certainly can do that, but we're not going to edit the document live on television, if you know what I mean. So it's to look through it and have a chance. You'll see that on the very front page, we've already updated the names and the year, and we've added the date, today's board meeting date, assuming that we will approve it tonight. If not, we'll put a different date on there. So if we go on to page 3, You'll note that we made some, just the district overview, we made some changes to bring it up to date, including an accurate reflection of our enrollment and our demographics. We left both in there so you could see the difference between the last edit and this edit.
So I know you don't want a wordsmith, and I can appreciate that, but PSEE doesn't exist anymore, so that can be removed.
Okay.
And you just need to add Pleasanton Partnerships and Education Foundation, the word foundation before the acronym.
Okay.
I promise I won't do the he she thing, which I've seen throughout the document. I really want to correct, but I'll leave that for another time.
Yeah, I think that some of that we can do in broad scope, so you can give us direction to make those changes throughout. It really is a formatting change more than anything else, so that's easy to do. Okay. One of the other changes is that we changed the numbers of employees to reflect both full-time and part-time employees. The older numbers were correct, but they didn't reflect the number of part-time employees that we have working in the district. And so that was one other modification that we made.
You're going to want to say part-time before certificated, so you need the word time. Got full and part certificated.
You're right.
They're half certificated.
Good catch. All right. Then we go down onto page 4. Again, this is still the introductory portion of it, which you've all had an opportunity to read. We have added a link to the organizational work plan, which we'll talk a little bit later on, and included the 5 organizational goals, which are a key component of the organizational work plan. And we're proposing that we link subsequent year work plans so that people can see, as we go year to year to year, they can see, have a link to all of those documents. Any feedback on that addition?
Yeah, that's great because this is online. So then community members can just click on those reports and all the hyperlinks. As I see, also have a link to the organizational work plan, which is great.
Yes.
Do we want to just, I know you have the organizational goals, but there is a overall visual graphic that I know you have on the website. Would that benefit as well or not? And I'm thinking more of like when you go to the board agenda where it lists the mission and the vision. I don't know if that's a place for that here as well, to like list the mission and the vision of the district as well. It's just a thought.
That appears on page 6.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
That's okay. The image that you're referring to are the 5 columns basically that just identify the 5 goals. And this is a pretty text-heavy document, so it might be a good addition. So we'll make note of that. Lenita, if you could make note of that, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I'm a visual learner. It might also kind of break up the text on the page visually.
Yeah, I think Patrick has that image, so he can get that to you. So let's go ahead and move on into page 5. The effective governance page. So let's, if we can, because I think these are important, there were some governance resources that we added at the bottom. They're just links to published documents, but I thought maybe during this conversation, this might be a section we might want to read together. So who would like to start reading that paragraph there under the definition of governance? I
can start. I can start.
Okay, thank you, Kelly.
Governance, a definition. School boards ensure success for all students by making decisions that fulfill legal mandates and align district systems and resources to ensure the long-term Fiscal stability of the district. Boards must act collectively and openly be guided by community interests and informed by recommendation of the superintendent and professional staff. Board members often face conflicting role expectations that arise from the nature of representational governance and the laws pertaining to school governance in California. These differences create three different lenses through which individuals and boards can exercise their duties. These three roles, representative, enforcement, and fiduciary, combined with complexity of the K-12 education, create a framework of the four perspectives within which the board governs.
Okay, somebody else can read the bullets. Who wants to read the bullets?
I'll read the bullets.
Thank you.
The community perspective, which is what the stakeholders want the schools to do. The legal perspective, which is the law that says what the schools must do. And I know these because I pulled them right out of CSBA to put into this document. The professional perspective, what educators say the schools ought to do, and the fiduciary perspective and what the schools are able to do.
Very good. So Mark, you want to take that next section?
Yeah. In a school district, the governing board and superintendent work together as a governance team. For a governance team to work together effectively, members need to, 1, maintain a unity of purpose, 2, agree on and govern within appropriate roles, 3, create and sustain a positive governance culture, and 4, create a supportive structure for effective governance. Establishing and agreeing to basic tenets of effective governance enable the governance team members to create a climate for excellence in a school district and to maintain the focus on improved student learning and achievement.
Right. So thank you for that. There are some basic links there to CSBA resources and our bylaws. So y'all might know where those at, but putting the links there gives access to the community. So that's why we added those there. Going on to the next section, which is starting on page 6, where we revisit the mission and vision statement of the school district. And those are incorporated into this image, which is the strategic plan of the district. And so you've heard these before. Our students will make a better world is the mission statement, very clean, very simple. And the vision that every student will be a resourceful, resilient, responsible, and engaged world citizen. And so those are the statements of fact that we work hard every day to actualize, to see appear in the lives of our students. And so it's really, really fun when we see kids go out and do wonderful things and we can reference back to our mission and vision and say that we're actually accomplishing those things. Those are some pretty powerful ideals. And they're based on core beliefs. So starting on page 7, we get to the core beliefs. Janelle, would you read the core beliefs?
Certainly. 1, we believe. Do you want me to read all of these?
Yeah, just the bullets in section 1.
Okay. With guidance and targeted supports, all students can reach their greatest potential. All students and staff have the right to a safe and respectful learning environment that fosters positive connections. Public education should focus on the whole child, provide equitable opportunities for all students, and create socially responsible individuals with character and integrity. And ensuring a culture and climate that promotes a highly skilled, dedicated, and passionate educational team. In providing learning that is innovative, irresistible, creative, relevant, and rigorous. It is the school district's responsibility to inspire curiosity and passion for lifelong learning.
So do any of the board members have thoughts about those belief statements? Are those things that you, especially with our new board members, are those concepts that resonate with you?
I just make a comment on bullet number 3 about the whole child with equitable opportunities. I think that's really, really important to recognize that we have diverse learners, and every child learns differently, and that that impacts with equitable instruction. But that one really resonates very much to me personally. I think that's really really important.
Very good. Thank you. Anybody else?
I just want to say that as a teacher, these are things that we would regularly discuss. And so I think these are great values. And I just, especially when it says all students can reach their greatest potential.
Yeah, and it's heartening to hear a teacher say that these were conversations that we had amongst ourselves at the school site, because that's when you can really trust that the beliefs, the core beliefs that the district holds to are permeating throughout the system. So that's really good feedback. All right. So number 2, we commit to communicate and support the mission and vision. So we have our mission statement, our vision statement there, and then there's several other bullets. I'll just read them real quickly. We demonstrate commitment to the mission and vision and goals by regularly communicating them to staff and to the community. Exhibit behaviors and make decisions that support achievement of the district's mission and vision. We stay current on trends and emerging needs in education in order to proactively participate in renewing or reviewing the district's direction and policies. Uphold board decisions, and new members are encouraged to attend CSBA's Masters in Governance and other workshops. So it's another way that we support our core beliefs. All right, let's see. Steve, how about you take number 3?
Okay. We operate openly with trust and integrity, conduct district business in a fair, respectful, and responsible manner, consider the concerns and interests of students, staff, parents, and community, encourage thorough consideration of issues, engage in dialogue for clarification, and withhold judgment until all perspectives are heard, ensure that all members of the board have the same information, clearly communicate decisions to all those who are affected by them, keep confidential information confidential, and assume good intentions.
Thank you, Steve. The idea of openness, trust, and integrity is critical to any organizational leadership group, because if we can't communicate openly, if we don't trust one another, and if we don't function with integrity with each other, we're not going to be able to achieve those great core beliefs that we just talked about. Does any of those bullets that Steve just went to resonate with any of you personally, and you'd like to share a little bit about what that means?
Well, I think that when we state that we operate openly with trust and integrity, to me, that's really how we operate as a board. And if we live up to these principles, then I think we'll become a strong governing board. If you don't trust one another, certainly you don't have integrity to discuss things openly with them. It's just, and then when you say in a fair, respectful, and responsible manner. And I think that's one thing that I enjoyed about the last board. As we moved forward, we got to the point where we were respectful and certainly responsible, and even if we had different opinions. And I think that's very, very important.
A couple things for me. One is, when we consider the concerns and interests of students, staff, parents, and community. I mean, I think, we get inundated by, emails from the community and parents and so forth. But it really, it's not just any one or two of those. It's really all 4 of those. It's very important. And then the other one that's not here that probably is later on and gets done third to the last, clearly communicate decisions to all of those who are affected by them, is something I think Joan mentioned a couple of weeks ago. That is that no matter how we vote as a board, we have to support the decision of the board vocally, and we can't be saying, well, I didn't agree with that or whatever. I mean, you can, obviously you have your vote, but ultimately we have to uphold and support the decision of the board if it's the majority that has voted that way. So I don't know if that's in there somewhere later on, but
yeah, all throughout the document, actually. That's one of key themes in the document itself.
I just was, go ahead, Mary Jo.
I just wanted to say that we're a role model for our students and for our community. So these are things we need to do.
I was just going to talk about the last one, which was assume good intentions. And this was added through the work of a facilitator in conversations that we were having with each other, because, especially for people, if you've known each other for a long time, you know people's biases and you know their passions and you know their whatever. And so sometimes you have to remember, it's important to assume that we're all coming to the table with good intentions. And even though, like you said, we could disagree with each other and we could disagree, a lot on an issue at the dais, knowing why we're all here and, that we're all doing this with, the good intentions of helping students, and just keeping that in mind has helped me a lot over the years. So.
Okay.
I would just share that, the bold point about trust and respect and integrity, what resonates for me, it actually just kind of came up today with a conversation with my son and some miscommunication that we were having. And it really made me reflect that, trust is earned. You don't just get it. And I think that just resonates through our characters, our behaviors, our actions, and that, if there's a sense of mistrust, it can kind of make things crumble. And so for me, resonating, and for my son, going back to my point, I think my son misunderstood something I was saying. I had a follow-up conversation with him about something he didn't understand in a question. I was telling him, I said, Ryan, this isn't about, that you didn't do the work. It's really, did you figure out, different ways to solve the situation, answer the question, because I couldn't figure it out. And I realized that it was a miscommunication aspect to him. And I was trying to tell him and what he was interpreting. And he interpreted that I didn't understand him. And so just the respect and trust is really critical, but also being transparent with the communication. And, that whole process, just because you communicate a message doesn't mean that the recipients are interpreting it the same way. So transparency, communication really helps circle about, but you have to have the trust and respect in the underlying tenets to help make sure that clear communication is transparent.
Thanks. Julio, you want to do number 4?
Sure. We govern in a dignified and professional manner, treating everyone with civility and respect. Treat the community, parents, students, and staff with dignity and respect. Listen openly and respectfully to each other, members of the community, parents, students, and staff. Welcome open discussion of different points of view. Demonstrate ability to disagree on issues and still maintain trust, respect, and dignity. Work together, build consensus for decisions.
Any thoughts about those bullet points in that area?
Well, I think I'll just say, what I was saying for bullet number 3 kind of overlaps with 4. That, I know that there'll be times when we may agree to disagree. But ultimately, when we make a decision as a board, it's something that, as Trustee Miller mentioned, that there may be times where we may disagree, but once a decision has been made, and it might be through that whole process of dialogue, but that we'll come to a common term, an agreement, and then hold true to whatever decision is made on behalf of the board.
Yeah, coming to consensus is different than coming to agreement. And so, that consensus is the goal, not necessarily agreement. So that's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to hold on to sometimes, but I think it's important, especially in this role, because you have the information that you have on the day that you're making the decision. And sometimes things change. And so if we have to change a decision, it doesn't mean that we were wrong in the first place. It means we made the best decision we had based on the information that we had at that time. So if we keep that in mind, then we'll probably be less prone to suggest that somebody else wanted to do something wrong, as opposed to you who wanted to do something right. So consensus building is important. Joan, did you want to add?
Yeah, the other thing I like about that is there's, I'm sure you guys heard this at CSBA. Somebody probably just said it somewhere along the line, but at the end of the day, you just have to do the math, right? You just need 3 votes on a 5-member board, but that's not the best way to make decisions. And David's taught us a lot about that since he's come here, and sometimes we're going to get down to a vote, and it's just going to be a vote. But through the process of working with each other on the dais and saying, asking questions like, well, why, which we don't do, and I don't do enough, so this is an area where I want to work on, saying, well, why do you feel that way? Or what makes you think that this is a better way or whatever, so trying to tease out and explore that information a little bit better. And then, crafting, not necessarily where you'd say it's a compromise, but crafting that consensus viewpoint, I think leads to better decisions that have more buy-in, ultimately from not just the board members, but from the community too. And, and we didn't, and I've been on a board where we didn't do that. And the difference is just enormous in how I feel about my work and how I think the community feels about the work we do. So to me, that last bullet is super important.
Yep.
I would agree. And the one thing I would say is, and we do a good job of this as a board, is we don't try to convince each other. We try to make people understand what our point of view is. And that avoids the bad feelings, I think, and stuff, is because, we can respect each other's points of view and listen to those points of view and understand why, and maybe it changes our opinion or something along the way. I've had my mind changed many times by people just understanding where they came from. So to me, that's a good quality of this board that we want to continue to foster.
Very good.
Well, I also think that when boards get into disagreements a lot and arguments, and we know some boards in the areas that do that, then people focus on the theatrics, the community of what is going on the board, and not really what their real purpose is and what they're trying to do. And that really all they see is just that board argues all the time, or that board member is against anything when any other board member is suggesting. And then your whole purpose for being a board is gone, because that's what they're watching and that's what they're looking at and what they're listening for, instead of looking at the board as somebody that's trying to guide the district.
Very good. Let's see, Lanita, you want to take number 5?
Sure. Number 5, we govern within board adopted policies and procedures. Maintain a policy development, approval, and timely update process that is understood and followed. Understand the distinctions between the role of the board and that of the superintendent and staff. Have agreed upon norms and protocols for carrying out board responsibilities.
Very good. In that, the whole concept of agreed upon norms and protocols is what we're doing tonight. So that's a big part of the process of getting in line. We've all talked about the differences between the roles and responsibilities between the board and the superintendent. I think everybody does a really good job of respecting those roles, including staff. And some people would say, well, why do you have the whole cabinet here participating? Why do you have Lanita participating? Because they're a part of a team. And that team is here to work with you and to support you as a board. And so even though maybe other people don't do it that way, I think we do it that way. It's important that we function together as a team. So we don't say that in our norms there, but I want to make people to know that's something that's really important to me, that everybody needs to be a part of the team.
Do we want to add that to the norms?
That's something that we could talk about, but that's, again, we can take a note there, Lanita, and then, we can revisit that later on. Let's keep going. Mary Jo, you want to take number 6?
Sure. We take collective responsibility for the board's performance, assume collective responsibility for board conduct, function as a governance team with the superintendent, demonstrate a commitment to continually improving governance efforts, and take responsibility for the orientation of new members.
Well, we got 2 new members this time. And so it's been nice to see, I'll just make a comment and then others can jump in if they want. It's been nice to see how board members have reached out to our new partners and, tried to provide that level of support. And I hope that the new board members feel equally as comfortable reaching back out to the other board members because you're joining a team and we want you to feel welcome. Other comments from anybody else?
Well, I'll just say a special thanks to all the trustees and President Larson for making Trustee Carey and I feel welcome to the team and being accessible and available at all different times and helping to answer our questions. It means a lot. It really has meant a tremendous amount to me as a new trustee. As a lifelong learner, as I remember my first conversation with Dr. Hadlin, that we are lifelong learners.
We absolutely are. And we train up lifelong learners. So it's important for us to remember that. So Joan, you want to take number 7?
Sure. We periodically, which we don't do, but we periodically evaluate
take it.
I knew you did. I'll get you back later. We periodically evaluate our own effectiveness. We have procedures in place for regular, ongoing self-evaluation, ensure meeting agendas provide for a sound order of business and facilitate a primary focus on matters related to student achievement, ensure that individual board members understand their roles and the limits of individual responsibility and authority.
Thoughts or comments?
Well, we do all of them except the first one.
Yeah, to the second bullet, and the new trustees, when you go through the Masters in Governance program, you'll read this report, but there is actually research that's been done on board effectiveness and comparing it to the content of board agendas. And board agendas that are populated largely looking at student achievement and issues related to student learning, those boards outperform and the students outperform in those districts compared to districts that focus mainly on, construction projects or other political noise. And so that second bullet is really, really important. Anybody else? Thoughts?
I'm a huge proponent on self-evaluation. I think that's really, really important. I know there's been a transition and movement with student assessment and that self-evaluations for students and teaching them the self-metacognitive skills. So I know that movement has also transcended all the way into the classroom with students. But if you're saying that bullet number 1 hasn't been done, I would be a huge proponent to support that. I think that's really important. I think it'll also build on being transparent, the communication of transparency. So I need to learn more about that, but I support self-evaluation.
Yeah, we will talk more about the evaluation piece a little bit later on in our meeting.
But in student terms, we talk about self-reflection. So whether it's self-evaluation or self-reflection, I think it's really important.
Yeah, I think, just to comment on this, I mean, we talk about this every single year, and we've done it a couple of times on an ad hoc basis, maybe. My feeling on self-evaluation is it can become a check the box item. And so I just don't know how to make it effective, right? So what should it be? It should be an honest assessment of how we're doing relative to, our norms and our goals and all those things. and I don't know what's the best way to facilitate that honesty and really not making it a check the box item. So I look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, I have some thoughts about that one, so I'm looking forward to it as well. Ed, you want to take number 8?
Sure. We ensure opportunities for the diverse range of views in the community to inform board deliberations. Ensure practices enable parents, staff, and the public to participate in meaningful ways in district discussions, school programs, and activities. Consider the concerns and interests of all segments of the community in deliberation.
Thoughts?
I would just love to see us to think outside the box and to see how we can get more communication from our stakeholders and our teachers and our families and our students.
Me too. I agree with you. I will say, though, that, last year and the year before, we went out into the community and we had stakeholder meetings, and we were lucky if we got 7 or 8 people that would show up to those meetings. It was pretty disappointing. But this year, with our town halls, we've knocked it out of the park with engaging folks. So we may have learned something about strategies to engage folks in conversation. Those town halls, I think, will be much more productive when they're not so laser focused on things we're frustrated about and more trying to engage people in conversations. So I'm looking forward to an opportunity to use that strategy when we're not quite so focused on one particular thing.
Maybe this is the benefit of the whole Zoom concept. And, I look forward to the day when we don't have to do it by Zoom, but maybe that's the better forum for that, David, rather than doing, because then people don't have to leave their house to go do things and stuff. But, when listening to this one, I can't help but think about the complaints we've recently gotten around school reopening and the lack of communication that people complain about, right? And I just wonder, I feel like there's so many avenues of communication, and maybe people are losing it in their day-to-day other communication or something, but I do feel like we do a pretty good job of that, honestly. And I just don't know how to, it takes 2 to communicate, and I don't know how to make the recipient more eager and open to receiving communication. So I don't know.
Well, as Daryl says, as my husband Daryl, who some of you haven't met yet, always says, well, you didn't come knock on my door, so you didn't try to communicate with me. And it's a joke, but it's also true. We have tried so many different ways, and I'm like, as I drive past, I think it's over at Jean's where they still have a sign stuck up that says PUSD, show us the plan. I'm like, the plan's on the website. It's been there since July.
Yeah.
So, I agree, Mary Jo. I think that we do need to continue trying some different things. And like the Zoom has worked out pretty successfully. But some of it is getting back to that diverse learner thing, right? So I don't want to see a video. I personally want to read something. Someone else likes a video. Someone else might like a robocall, to say, don't forget to turn in your survey by Friday or you won't be counted. I just think that, we're going to have to hit all the things.
I also think that there's got to be a way for us to think outside the box. Maybe we can have breakout rooms. Maybe there's a way for us to generate ideas from the public. I just feel like part of the problem is they don't feel heard. And so what can we do to encourage more communication on their end?
Oh, yeah. So that's a different way to look at it. So you're saying that it's not that we're not communicating. You're saying we're not getting their communication?
Yes. I don't feel like they're getting their point of view across and aren't being heard.
Well, and there's a bit of, I don't feel you heard me until you're doing the thing that I'm asking you to do. So So in some cases, it's, yes, we understand that you want us to do something other than what we're going to do. But we're going to do the thing that we've decided is best for kids. And great, we understand you have thoughts and opinions and differences, and that's great, but we have to, as a board, have to come to consensus about a direction and then act on that consensus. Otherwise, we keep getting thrown back and forth between different groups of people who think differently. But yes, there are significant things that we can do to increase engagement in terms of collecting information, and I think breakout rooms is just one of the many examples about how to do that. You did hear, though, as people were sharing, that they were in the same breath, they were saying they don't think there's enough communication, but then they say they get too many emails from the district, right? So it's finding that balance, and everybody's got to figure out what's the best way for them to do it. I've asked Patrick to start looking into creating clips, video clips of, for example, the 4-minute presentation or whatever, my comments at the beginning of board meetings, because sometimes there's important information in those things, and they could be cataloged on the website so people can come and find them if they want. Lenita and I have been talking about ways to structure the agenda and utilize technology so that folks can actually dig directly into agenda items, including the videos, to get directly to the section of the conversation that they want to hear about without having to, sit through or scan through the entire board meeting to hear the conversation that they're looking for. So we're looking into a whole lot of different ways to go about that. Will it be ready next week? No, but yes, we are working on trying to increase ways to improve that sharing of information.
But always good to think outside the box.
So, David, I've been in discussion with you and Lenita about some of this type of stuff having to do with communication and the agenda, and I'm not sure where you'd like me to talk about that. I don't know if this is the appropriate place.
When we get to the section where we look at the, what is it called? The structures and processes.
Okay.
I think that's when we'll get to that stuff.
Okay, thanks.
So let's keep going. Starting on the next page, which is page 9, we start looking at roles and responsibilities of the board members. Much of that is stuff that we've already called out in the earlier section of the document. So in some ways, this document's repetitive, and we may want to look at how to limit the repetition. It would make it a shorter document, that's for sure. Going on to page 10, where you get to the responsibilities. Again, a lot of you'll notice setting the direction in schools, focusing on student learning. Those are all things that we addressed in our core beliefs. So do we need to state it in the core beliefs and here in roles and responsibilities, or do we need to just have it in our core beliefs and not repeat it again? So I'd appreciate some feedback from the group on that issue, because as you read through these, you're going to note that most of them we've already read once. That's why I had you read through that first section, so you could kind of relate to that. Any thoughts about the repetition, if it's helpful or unhelpful?
Well, as a new board member, it was helpful to me.
This is more specific, so I don't have a problem with trying to condense or consolidate, but this is like how you ensure accountability, because you evaluate the superintendent in accordance with the contract. You set policy for the evaluation of personnel, for example. You serve as a judicial and appeals body. That's not in the other area. So this is a more specific list of the responsibilities.
Okay.
So I don't know if we maybe can pull the other one down into this. I don't know.
Yeah, so to me, there would be a reconciliation that would have to occur and maybe a different way to format it, but to get it into a more condensed form. But my question there is it worth the effort? I know we're we got to make sure we keep everything in sync between the beliefs and the roles and responsibilities, but yeah, I don't know.
I would just like to make a comment. I don't think it's repetitious. So we talk about core beliefs, but that's, that's overarching. And then you go into roles and responsibilities. So I don't necessarily see it as repetitious, but roles and responsibilities kind of help execute your beliefs.
Okay. Steve, you have a thought?
Well, when I read, like the table of contents, governance roles and responsibilities, then performance governance responsibilities, you're almost saying the same thing, quite frankly. But I see this one here as actually a to-do list. This is what I really have to make sure I do, like evaluate the superintendent. I know we mentioned it before, set policy, monitor, review. It actually gives me guidance of what I need to make sure that I'm doing.
Okay.
I don't know if we can combine both of them.
Well, it sounds like this is helpful to y'all, so I don't know that we need to do that work if the document is helpful as it stands. So let's go ahead on to the positive governance, team culture, and governance norms. Who wants to read that paragraph under team culture? Ahmad, you haven't read anything yet. It's your turn.
I knew you were going to. I knew you were going to choose me. Okay.
He's the student in the back of the room that wasn't following. Wait.
Okay. Culture is the positive or negative atmosphere created by the interaction among the people in an organization. Teams have unwritten, implicit, or written explicit agreements about how they will behave. These behavioral ground rules, often called norms, enable teams to build and maintain a positive culture. Because the community elects school board members to set and monitor the direction of the district, and the superintendent translates all efforts into action, it is vital that the board and the superintendent have a respectful and productive working relationship based on trust and open communication.
So we agree to.
I'm going to continue.
Take the first bullet, Joan. These are our agreements.
Focus on the best interests of students.
Steve?
Exhibit positive body language.
Kelly?
Be willing to compromise.
Mark?
Focus on process, not personalities.
Mary Jo?
Act by building on the thoughts and ideas of fellow governance team members.
Janelle?
I think you should take a bio break.
Ahmad, you go.
Commit the time necessary to govern effectively.
Ed?
Commit to open communication, honesty, and transparency.
Patrick, where'd you go? You should do one.
Sorry, I had to take myself off mute first. Be prepared for board meetings.
Maintain confidentiality. Lanita?
Be respectful of each other, administration, staff, and community members at all times.
And Mark, you do another one.
Seek to understand other points of view and respect the opinions of others.
So those are group agreements. Is everybody able to give a thumbs up that they agree to those statements?
Why don't we have reactions on our Zoom? It's very annoying.
Patrick, I don't know. You can raise your hand, but that's about it. I didn't see a thumb from Joan, so we have to wait until there it is. Okay. Structures and processes to support effective governance. So there's a few modifications here. Lanita, do you want to talk about what you did here?
Sure. Basically, just reformatted. So the issues are in specific buckets. So the original document, the issues were kind of scattered, and they didn't really, so what I did was I kind of lumped the issues into the 4 groups: communication, community, board meetings, and governance. I didn't edit the issues or any of the context. I just put them together in the buckets.
All right. So as you read through this document, you can see some very specific protocols related to certain topics. And I know Joan had a couple of these that she wanted to talk about. So the first one being handling concerns from the public and staff. So Joan, you want to talk about that at all?
Sure. So you guys have now been here a whole month, right? And I want to say you've probably gotten 500 emails.
Yes.
So we have some bylaws that are around board bylaws that say, for example, that the board president is the spokesperson for the board. And I'm not proposing to necessarily change that. But in the past, we have had conversations about who responds when a community member emails the entire board. Who responds to that? Do we all individually respond with whatever it is that we want to say? Or do we, expect the board president to do that? Or so there's just some things around this that I just kind of wanted to talk about. As you probably learned, email that is sent to us is a public record. I mean, anybody, if we get a Public Records Act request, even if it's an anonymous email, we have to, it'll get scooped up out of the email and provided, as well as if you're using your personal email, that also is not recommended, because if you do that on a regular basis, then when the lawyers come to do a Public Records Act request, they're going to say, oh, you use your regular email, so we want to comb through that too. So try to keep your email, try to keep your board business in your school board Pleasanton Unified email address. But other places have some other ways that they do things. Even locally, the city council has one email address on the city council page that the community can just email that one email address, and all of the board members then get a copy of it. And typically, I think there's like a auto reply on it that says, your email's been received, blah, blah, blah. So I really have 2 things I'd like to kind of talk and take your temperature on, and then it would have to go through the policy committee and come back to you for a vote if we decide to do it. One is that, in my opinion, emails that we receive are correspondence. And lots of other boards have a section on their agenda for correspondence. So things would go there that are like the letter from ACOE saying, we have a positive certification, they agree with us. Things like, correspondence to the board would go on an agenda item that would collate the correspondence that had been received since the last board meeting. Similarly, some districts, not a lot, but some districts put the emails that board members receive in that correspondence section on the agenda. And when we're talking about transparency, when we're talking about openness, then you can see, actually there were 500 emails, and what they say, there would be a link to it so that the community could say, oh, these people have been emailing the board members. I think it's also a way to have people realize that the way that they speak to staff and the board in emails is important, because it is public, can be public, and this would make that very explicit.
So just to clarify, Joan, you're talking about an email that's sent to all 5 board members.
It's not, some districts, if it's sent to any board member. That's the thing I want people to think about, just kind of the conceptual concept on this. And then Lenita has said that in her prior district, there was also on that page, there would be links, email links to the appropriate staff members, so that it's like, if you're emailing the board because you have a question about the PSAT, I'm just going to pick on that one. Here's who you should actually be emailing to ask that question. Because it's really supposed to be our protocol. Our protocol that we've tried to maintain is that we're trying to direct the community back into the system at the appropriate level to get their questions answered.
And you can see that the steps for that in that very first box.
Right.
Where it says, in response to complaints, board members will. They'll receive it, they'll repeat it, they'll remind it, they'll redirect the person to the appropriate person on staff, basically.
And I don't want to go through the trouble of trying to work on this if it's something that you guys hate. But if it's something that you think might be valuable, it can be an iterative process that we work out. And it's going to take time, and we'll probably have to change bylaws and things too. So that's kind of one. That's one of the things. The other thing is we have officers with board officers with specific duties. We have 2. We have the board president, who runs the meetings and is the spokesperson for the board. And we have the vice president, who presides in the event the president can't be there, and there's some other things on the vice president's list. I'm going to be really honest and say that being president this year is pretty tough for me to respond to a lot of these emails that are coming in. I've used things in the past where, I use a canned response that I then tailor, and, so that I'm responding to people, and people do want to be responded to. It's just a challenge with all the other board duties that go along with being president. And I'm wondering if there might be some other way. Maybe we could have something like a clerk position that responds on behalf of the board and copies the president and the superintendent. And then board members could still respond individually if you really feel you want to, but then you would know that this person that had emailed all the board members was being responded to. You would be able to trust that was being done, because it would be being done by the person who took that role for that year. So that's kind of my thoughts on that, and I wanted to hear, what you guys thought about that.
A question on that. So, in some cases, I can't tell this, but especially when people use blind copy and stuff like that, but I don't know who all they're necessarily emailing to. So, in the first proposal about all correspondence, then basically that wouldn't matter, right? You'd share all those things, but you wouldn't necessarily. You'd always have to forward, I guess, to any emails like that to the clerk. I like the clerk idea, actually, Joan. I think that's a really good idea, because of the work list. It takes, when I write an email, I want it to be so carefully written. I don't want to say anything wrong. So it's like, even a 1-paragraph email sometimes takes an hour, so it's hard. So, but I like the clerk idea. I'm not sure on publication. I don't want to stifle people's communication with us.
And that might, if they know it's going to show up on a board packet, they might not want to write the board.
But then again, I also want to see, sorry, Steve, I just wanted to add really quickly is that I don't know. It seems to me like you guys get emails that I don't get. So I'm interested in seeing what emails you guys get. So there's that angle too.
I'd just like to jump in there. So I like the concept of putting something in public on the agenda. Maybe it's not necessarily the actual email, because that could be like hundreds of pages, or I don't know, just like a lot of information. Maybe just summarize key topics, key points, bullets summarized, So it's not the actual email communication, but these were the concerns expressed on behalf of the community, emailed to the board. So that's a suggestion. In terms of a clerk doing auto responses, I am concerned about the impersonal message that could come off from that. It really, to me, is problematic. I do know that, responding to emails takes time, but, people connect to different, I don't know. I'm kind of struggling with that just because of it being impersonal. And we may take one point of an email that we can really gravitate, that can connect to the person who submitted the email to the entire board, and another trustee may have another slant to help make some connections, even though we may be communicating a consistent message back. So anyway, those would be my two suggestions. One, maybe not necessarily the entire emails, but maybe summary bullet points. And then I have some reservations, just because, we know we can do like another way. There's another way to handle it, like do an auto signature response. Say, hey, I got your email, respond back later, but I am concerned that we'll actually make that disconnect from the community to the trustees further rather than closer.
I think that the recommendation wasn't to have an auto answer. It was to have one board member to be the respondent on behalf of the board.
Yeah, I'm struggling with that. I don't.
Well, that doesn't mean that you can't respond as well. But there may be some emails that come in that you don't want to respond to. So at least the clerk would respond to all of the emails that came in.
But how is that different than doing an auto? Okay, but I guess I'm not really processing what the clerk would be, because we get so many different emails on different topics, different messaging, and the clerk may not even have the information. So I'm having a hard time processing that.
Well, my idea was that the clerk would respond to the person's questions. And let's say it's a normal situation where you're like, they have a question about, something in particular, and the clerk would write the email back that's directing the person into the system where they need to be to get their questions answered. Or it's a question about the board's decision on something. The clerk would respond with the board's decision and what it was about or whatever. I don't know. I was just trying to, this has only gotten, so I've been on the board. This is my 11th year. This has only gotten more. And on the one hand, it's good, right? Because it is like you said, it's communication that they are sharing with us. But the sheer volume of it, it comes, of course, it comes like right before a board meeting, and there's no way you can respond to them before the board meeting. And we have board members who have full-time jobs, and it's my sincere hope that we don't make this public service be limited only to people who are retired or, don't work outside the home. Just because it's hard enough to get people to run for school board to have that. So it's just an idea, and I'm hearing, there's, some value to it, but that it's not something that we're ready to move forward with at this point. Steve, you were going to say something?
I was just going to say that I've spoken to 3 parents today, and I have 2 in the morning, and usually I'll get my board, like a lot of the questions about the SAT and so forth. I say, well, do you know this? And I'm finding that I would say that 90+% of the parents I'm able to talk to say, oh, and they seem to be calm. I always let them give their point of view, no matter if it's about school opening or whatever. And then a lot of time I'm finding that it's clarification of, no, the board has a plan. July 14th, this is where we are. We follow the guidelines. And then I would say that predominantly most of them, okay. And they just kind of want to talk to someone or email someone and connect somehow, kind of going back to what I think Kelly is talking about. And I would not want to give that up because I don't really, now if someone emails me and they're really rude, swearing, I don't even go there because they're not civil. But if they're polite and asking a legitimate question about what the board has decided or what they're going, I usually don't, as I go tell them all, I'm only one board member, you understand it, and the board collectively will discuss this. But know that, like on the opening of school, everyone wants school open. So don't go down the road of there's board members that don't, or teachers don't, or the cabinet doesn't. Everybody does. And I just reiterate that. And they seem to be much calmer now, the ones I've talked to. And they thank me, and they'll even mention other board members have talked to them. So I think long as we talk or email back, we don't go off on a tangent and say, well, I want to do this, which I wouldn't. But if we keep that in mind, that we're still collectively a board, I'm afraid that if we went to listen to them all, I do like Kelly's suggestion possibly. We have these, 300 emails, and these are the 4 topics they really were talking about. Now, I don't know if that means that they will feel we have to answer that because it's on the board, so maybe we have to answer those questions. I don't want to, that would add more to a board meeting, certainly. So I don't.
No, it's just, it's a section on the agenda that's just for correspondence. You're not addressing the correspondence. It's just, it's what we would have done in the old days when we got a paper letter.
Yeah.
It's just that when systems went to email, then that practice fell away. But before that, yes, official correspondence that came in the mail to you was official correspondence.
I nominate Steve to be the clerk.
I do too.
I second that.
Well,
That's 3 votes already.
Yeah, right.
I've learned from David that if they don't sign their name, I don't respond.
But I mean,
That's
the
fine. I agree.
The clerk could organize all the information and give it for the correspondence for the agenda too.
So why don't we do this rather than just saying that we don't have the support? Why don't we try to put some flesh on the bones, and then we can bring it back to the group once we kind of get it down in writing, Joan. Is that okay?
That's fine with me.
I would be interested in kind of a best practices approach to this. So I'm intrigued when I hear that other groups of other boards do this and stuff. I don't know if CSBA has any sort of a.
They don't really. I just have done a lot of Googling and looking at board, and trust me, I have to read other board agendas and watch other board meetings now. So I've seen some other things.
Oh,
President Larson,
Sorry.
I just would like to add that I love the concept of, like on the correspondence on the agenda. I love that concept. And so I guess for me, I need to have a better sense of what it would look like for automated responses from a clerk. Because I like how we started the
Not
conversation.
automated.
Well, the clerk
I don't mean
would,
automated, but on behalf of the city
on
clerk.
behalf of the
Okay.
board, yes.
Because I really want to go back to that point about people who are communicating to us have their voice and have a sense to be heard, and when you have it centralized from one person, it really does take back to that impersonal touch. But definitely look forward to further fruition of how this might look.
Yeah. So let's keep going because we
okay,
got.
so just to be clear, I got to be clear because Mark asked me this before. So currently the board president is not responding to every email on behalf of the board. I'm going to put that out there. Okay, good.
No extra pressure.
Set that expectation.
That's
Thank
a
you,
good
David.
norm.
Thank you,
The
David.
expectation I do have, Joan, is one that you taught me, quite frankly, is when I do have to speak for the board, like a Christmas message or Thanksgiving message, that I check with the board and give them a copy of what I would be sending to all the employees so that they have input or it's okay, so they know what is going out. So someone doesn't say, well, thank you for what you sent. And you go, I don't know what was sent.
Yeah, the no surprises rule works
Yeah.
for staff and for us too. So
Yeah, exactly.
that's great.
Thank you.
All right. So just to be clear, the board president is the designated spokesman for the district. And so no other board member gets to speak on behalf of the board. You can speak on behalf of yourself. You can reflect on past action of the board. But really the role of the spokesman is assigned to the board president. Now in other districts, the board clerk does do a lot of the communication on behalf of the board and behalf of the board president. So that is the role that would be appropriate, not a vice president. Vice president has other duties. So we'll look at some of the things that other districts are doing. We'll flesh some things out and we'll bring it back to y'all.
Okay.
Okay. Going down through the rest of this portion of the handbook, the only thing that has changed on those items is the titling. So you'll notice that in some cases, they had it on the right-hand side, and other cases, the detail was on the left-hand side, and Lenita tried to make it look organized or consistent by keeping the single or double word descriptor on the left-hand side, and then with the exception of self-monitoring and governance team effectiveness. And I want us to talk about that one. So I'm skipping all the way down now because the others are general processes that you're already aware of. To governance, that one little box that stands out all by itself. So the board will annually schedule a date to review governance team agreements and processes. We do that. And annual goal setting and self-evaluation. So that's the part that we don't have down yet. And so I've got some thoughts about how we might do that would align to other processes that we're already engaged in as a district. And so I want to talk more specifically about that. We can do that now, or we can jump through some of these last few pages. What's your pleasure? We got 30 minutes.
Whatever you think would be most efficient, Dr. Haglund.
So let's go ahead then and talk about the thoughts. So I'm thinking, so y'all have seen the organizational work plan, and I'll bring it up real fast. I think I'm going to try to share my screen. And let's see, I'm going to get to it. Where is that guy? So here it is. Can you see what I'm sharing? So this is the organization work plan, and I utilized a PDF. So you can download this off the district's website. In each of the goals, if you look on the far right-hand side of the chart, so you have your goal, number one, key objectives, and then the action items. And on the far right-hand side in that chart, you'll see that each division of the district has its own section, and they identify 1, 2, or 3 action items that are related to that goal. So what I'm proposing is that rather than having something that's disconnected from the work plan of the district, is that we try to align some objectives on the board's part that support those 5 organizational goals and incorporate it into the organizational work plan. So we add a section for the board of trustees after the superintendent's office. And then y'all would collaborate. We would collaborate together to come up with what are your action plans related to goal number 1? What are your actions related to goal number 2? So that it communicates to the community that this is a full spectrum process that incorporates the entire leadership of the district. It's not just a superintendent's plan. It doesn't just guide the work of principals and directors. It also outlines the work of the board of trustees. And so what would happen is during the cycle of evaluation, so you would reset goals in June, you would do a mid-year update in January, and then a final report in May. So you set up, go ahead.
I'm just saying, we start small because you have a whole bunch.
Well, you're going to be a portion of that whole plan, right? So I've been working on this plan now for, this is going on the 4th year, because that document started as my entry plan. And we evaluated my plan of entry at the end of the year, and it transitioned into the organizational work plan. And each year we've expanded the scope of that document so that it pushes down into the directors, to the principals, and it's now incorporated into the school site plans and the LCAP. And so it makes sense to add that next layer, which is the governance team's links to those 5 goals.
So,
and
Dr. Hagman,
go ahead.
My question is really more of how do you visualize it that the governing board would be kind of perhaps tagged on? Because I see that you have, performance indicators under goal number 2, for example. So is it how we're helping to accomplish goal number 2? So under the action items, would it be kind of like just adding the trustees there to help support those goals? Or I heard you say add on. So is it more explicit that there's something specific of how we'll help achieve goal 2? But you have a lot of indicators in there.
If you read the things that the divisions have put in there, those actions that they're doing are related to that goal in that section.
Correct.
So you would add things that the trustees are going to do that are related to that goal in that section.
Now, I hear you. I just meant that maybe some of the action items, it might be teaching and learning and the trustees.
No.
It might be more. Okay.
No. So we're not going to confuse the roles or blend the responsibilities. There will be specific things that you as a trustee and as a board of trustees focus on to support that goal.
Okay. I'm visual, so I was just looking visually.
So
you're not the only one. I'll be really honest with you. When we first started this, all the divisions wanted to have shared goals as well. And it took us some time to get everybody to really focus on those things that are unique to their division. That, you're going to do crosswork and there's going to be crosswalking of the document, but identify those things that really are tied to your work plan. And that's not all of it. If you look at those things, that's very small in comparison to what Mr. Dialazzo, as an example, is doing with the Student Support Services staff. Not everything they do is listed in that work plan. They've just identified some key performance indicators that they're paying attention to this year related to that goal.
Okay, so just to reiterate, just for me, and then I'll, so I love the concept of self-evaluation. I just think it's huge. And I love the idea of connecting ownership with the trustees to help to support the 5 organizational goals. However you want to execute that, I think we can kind of flesh out. But big picture, I love the concept. I think to help support that self-evaluation process according to the goals, I like the concept.
Joan, you were going to say something?
I was, and then I was going to find an example. But so I think for me, the easiest way to visualize this is obviously goal 3. I mean, the others are a little stickier in my head, right? Just because, you just brought it up tonight. But the goal 3 is to continue to clarify and strengthen district policies and procedures as evidenced by board actions and other data sources. So, we could have an item on there that is, about the approval, how many, a quantifiable action that has to do with, how many board policies were reviewed, how many were approved, something like that. I mean, to me, that's the one that I can most easily grab my head around. The other stuff is almost like, we have specific legal obligations to approve certain things at certain times, for example. That's also would be, in my mind, part of our evaluation. It's not really an issue so much for us because the staff does a really good job of getting stuff to us so that get it done on a timely basis. But there are a lot of districts who miss those benchmarks a lot because their boards are dysfunctional and they're meeting till 1 or 2 in the morning. and can't get through their actual work. So I think that, the self-evaluation stuff has normally the recommendations for how to do this. It's not, you can't have a secret vote, and you have to do it in public. And this is why most people don't like to do it. And some of them are different. You're evaluating yourself against your norms. Like, how did we do against those governance protocols and norms we just agreed to? So you're measuring how we are working together. And I do think that's valuable too, David. So that could be one of the things in there that is part of our action, is how well we're doing against our norms and our protocols. But yeah, we don't get to do anything in private. We have to talk about all this stuff, I think we did really great on blah, 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 but we really could work harder on this, we get to do that in public.
So yeah, and I would just say, so at first thought, I really kind of like the idea, David, of adding those in there. I do think it would be interesting to try it out, though, in that, obviously we would try it out for a year, but here are a couple of things that a little bit of watch points maybe. One is that, we really are, as we go back to board roles and responsibilities, to Joan's point, one of our roles and responsibilities is just, mandated junk. We got to approve this, you got to approve that, all this kind of stuff. So just doing the wash, right? You've got to do that. The other thing is we set guidance for the district, and we create policies and so forth in terms of establishing the rules and towards those guidance and stuff. And we have talked about in the past, but we can't say we're going to, if our goal is to reduce suspensions in, the disproportionality scenario, that is one of our main goals. The actions are really through the employees. We set the direction for that, but even that, you guys do a lot in the direction area. So I'm wondering, and I know, sorry, I'm going rambling a little bit, but in the past we've talked about the board in the past we've tried to deal with so many things in a given year, and we felt the need at some point that we need to focus on 3 to 5 key goals for the year. Maybe one is the disproportionality thing, another one is reopening schools, whatever it is. And so where I'm not struggling, but where I think would be interesting to see how it works out, is how do those translate? Let's talk about disproportionality. How does that translate to a board goal, action item, not goal, action item underneath, what is it, 4 or 5, where that would, not 2, 1 maybe. One. It would be under there. It's like, I'm just like thinking, how would we phrase that from what could that board actually do?
I think if you take that idea, the idea of supporting the equity work, and then you look back over the governance handbooks about your roles and responsibilities, I think you'll see things in there that you're responsible for, like communicating with the community. So there are things that you can do in your role as a board member to articulate the vision out in the community about the equity work. Mm-hmm. So that's something that you can, that you could put into that plan. What action steps you guys choose to do with regards to that, that's kind of up to you. But I think it ties back to your roles and responsibilities that we already talked about tonight. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I would just add
the work of the district. So it doesn't tie to Shay and her team that's really working on that plan. Yeah. You obviously need to know what that plan is. So if the plan is going to provide training, so one of the objectives for the board would be to engage in that training as a team, right? So that could be one of the goals that you set for that year, if that's some of the work that's taking place.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Some of the things that are in my area really could be yours. So the updating of board policies and blah, 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 that could be something that moves into the board's line. I coordinate that stuff, but I don't That's
Yeah.
your responsibility, your role, right?
Okay. Yeah,
So we
I like
support you in that work. So there's a few things like that that we could shift into the boards if that was the desire of the board.
No, I like it.
One thing I was thinking about, didn't they say that like 60% of the board agenda, if that's on student achievement, then you have a high achieving district? Could we have something like that? Is that measurable or not?
So
If I could just, hold on, Dr. Hagel, if I could just add on to what Trustee Carry-On is saying, orientation, and had a great visual of our responsibility, fiduciary responsibility, student accountability, student achievement. There were like 4 or 5 bullets that we as trustees support our responsibilities of what our role is. And so to continue with what Trustee Carry-On is saying, I'd love to see those 4 or 5 bullets. I can't find the slide right now to tie into our 5 goals to really have that as our overarching umbrella.
okay. So Mary Jo, did you get what you needed out of that? Okay. Any other thoughts?
I think we should give it a try. I'm wondering what you think process-wise that would look like.
So it would you would jump into the cycle in May, June. So remember, the organizational goals are refined in our conversation that we do in my evaluation process.
Yeah.
Okay, and so you would participate in that process that would identify the goals, and then the next step would be for you to write the objectives, for the team to write the objectives for each of those 5 goals where we set.
This would be another workshop type.
Probably I'm thinking probably in the June or August time. Because you remember that we work on it as a team and we give it to you in October. So yours would need to be developed in the time frame so that it's included as a part of that document when it's released in October.
So the other thing, like I said before, is like we definitely in the past have had, and I'm trying to think of what's the right relationship here, but we've had conversations around how does the board set the goal, have a say in the goals of the district for that upcoming year. We really want we want our district to focus on disproportionality, on, learning strategies, the top 3 to 4 things. And so if we could fold those in there, I think there's an opportunity there to fold that in somehow, right? Because your 5 items are generic year to year. They're guidelines or frameworks for things. It's the meat underneath it that matters, right? So being able to go in and say, well, maybe it's for each of those things, kind of what's the board's key priority for the district, and put an action item. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but timing wise, if we did that, then that May, June timeframe might be a good time for that. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, Mark, if I could throw in, I believe the answer to your question of how does the board's priorities get into the district's priorities, and we do that through the superintendent evaluation. So if we want to, during that process, using your example of, spending our 15% of our IDEA money on solving the disproportionality problem, we would do that through the superintendent evaluation process.
And that's the appropriate place for it to occur, because that's, I'm the one employee that you get to act on if things aren't going the way that you want it to go. So that's why it's appropriate to have it sit there.
There could even be, I'm just like spitballing, but there could be an action item having to do with how have we contacted our legislators or passed a resolution in support of blah, blah, blah. Those are, some of the things that always seem to come up at the last minute. And, if we're putting it in to say, that we're gonna try to do more advocacy work this year because this is going to affect our funding, which affects our ability to do X, Y, or Z in the plan or something. I mean, just kind of things like that.
That's another really good example of how, a resolution can support. That's how you articulate your voice publicly, right? So making statements about the equity work and the disproportionality work, that can be done through resolutions. That's board action that's supporting the work of the staff.
So circling back to the self-evaluation, this is sounding better and better all the time to me. Circling back to the evaluation thing, I think one of the points, so we do this at our work is we used to do it. We have the results part of our evaluation, and then we have the behaviors part of the evaluation. And I don't know, the norms thing and stuff. So Joan, I don't know if you wanted to, bifurcate that self-evaluation. We use the goals as one thing that we're measuring against, but we also have this other, or maybe it's incorporated into one of the goals or something like that. One of the goals is to, always operate with the highest trust and integrity.
Yeah, and I obviously it's going to be an iteration. I mean, we're going to start with something, right?
Well, the whole plan is an iterative process. I mean, each one of the divisions has been modifying their action steps related to the goal, and even the goals themselves have been modified over the course of the last 3 years. So it's supposed to be an iterative process. Now, the survey type of evaluation, I think I'm good at this, I think I'm good at that, and you do it on each other. I mean, that's what's been done in the past. And I don't personally know what value that holds. Maybe you think it does, but I
think we don't think it does, which is why we never do it.
Yay. So it sounds like we've got a plan moving forward with that self-evaluation process. And I'm looking back at my notes to see what else I had for tonight. And that's all I have. Any other thoughts before we close it down and move into our closed session agenda?
Dr. Haglund, this was bothering me, so I found it. In CSBA, they have a great visual that says 5 responsibilities of the board. I'd love to have this kind of tie into our 5 organizational goals. Number one, set the direction. Number 2, establish the structure. Number 3, create a supportive environment. Number 4, ensure accountability. And number 5, demonstrate community leadership throughout. So it's really combining your idea of how the trustees support the goals, but it ties it back into our responsibilities, full circle, and then to that evaluative process. So it's just a thought, really to make a stronger connection between our responsibilities and how we're executing our responsibility through support of our 5 organizational goals.
Yeah, if you look on page 9, you'll find that statement at the top, the first paragraph.
Right. So I guess what I'm saying is that besides listing our 5 responsibilities, but actually kind of blend that into action items in our goals.
So the organizational work plan is related to the organizational goals. So what we're not looking to do is to create a new organizational work plan based on the board's goals. We're looking to see how does the board act to support the goals of the organization.
Okay, I thought maybe next. So to continue, goal number 3, to continue to clarify and strengthen district policies and procedures as evidenced by the board, actions and other data sources. It might be demonstrated that, we are, helping to set the direction for that. So it was more of a conceptual idea, but I didn't mean to say to create another plan.
No, I think those 5 things that the board does are the context for the goals that we set, right? So everything has to be, and that was what I was trying to get to, Kelly, is like, there's certain things that we can and can't do. We can't have a goal to, mow lawns better or something like that, right? I mean, that would be getting into, we can We can have goals for improving our facilities or something like that. But I mean, that's a direction. That's to the point, to the first one that you're talking about. It's through that goal that we're setting the direction. That's what I was kind of trying to say is that, yeah, you're right. It does. Those 5 things come into play in every single goal we set. They have to conform to those 5 things, and it's important to say. I guess what I'm trying to say is, it's just as important to say that it can't go outside of those things either. That is our guardrails. Those 5 things are our guardrails as board members. So I think it really does. You're right. I mean, it really does fit well together. I don't know that we have to set specific goals to match those 5 things. I think those 5 things are the context by which we establish those goals.
Yeah. Thank you for adding that, Trustee Miller. I think that's what I'm trying to say, that maybe it's under the action items, if that's how we're demonstrating helping to achieve those goals.
Yep.
Mary Jo, how you feeling?
I'm overwhelmed, but I think it's just the job, and that just maybe go slow. I don't want to have too many goals.
Well, I just want to, I just have to say though, you guys, rereading this, I am endlessly impressed with the work that you're doing. And the fact that we're even talking about these goals in the midst of everything else that you're dealing with right now. And I so appreciate your time tonight. I mean, I know you guys have so many other things, and you have families too. And I appreciate, I just really want you to know, and I know we're all here, so we can all say it, but honestly, this, I don't want to use the word unprecedented because it's just overdone, but it's unprecedented how much is, as evidenced by today, we got a new plan. Now we get to go achieve that new plan today. Anyway, thank you so much for all your work. And this is an amazing work plan.
Yep. All right. So we are at 6:56. Joan, do you want to close this meeting, and then we will adjourn to our closed session meeting after a brief bio break?
The bio break. Yes, I do. We are adjourned at 6:56, and our next meeting is next Thursday, January 28th.
So we'll see everybody in the other link.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.